What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. My name is Court. I will be your host for the duration. With me, as always, is Chris.
How's it going, everyone?
And the reason why today is a special episode, first off, it's Thursday. Normally, we tape these on Sundays. They go up on my channel on Mondays. Today's Thursday. We're doing it today. It'll be up on my channel today, God willing. Of course, Andris isn't here with us today, but the reason it's special is we really only have one big topic today. It just couldn't wait any longer. We are going to be doing a full spoilers review of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Before we get to that, though, just because it's hot off the presses, as Chris said, not to you guys, but to me, they just dropped the first official trailer for The Matrix 4, Matrix Resurrections. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. As per usual, we want to encourage you guys to drop a like on this video. If you enjoyed it, it helps the video reach more people, helps the channel grow. We appreciate that very much. We would always love for you to jump into the comments and tell us whatever you think about the topics we're talking about, whatever we're discussing, or whatever thoughts you have on whatever you want to talk about. I do read all the comments. I respond to them when I can. And of course, if you don't have time to watch a long YouTube video, you can find audio only versions of the podcast on places like Spotify, Google Podcasts, things like that. So check that out if that's more your thing. So we're going to jump right into it because Chris is on his lunch break. We got to make sure he gets back to work on time.
Can't be late.
Chris, of the three of us, of course, only two of us being here, I think you were the most psyched for Matrix 4.
Absolutely.
And a couple days ago, of course, they dropped the teaser and you were going through it frame by frame, really digging into it.
Because they had a cool idea. Essentially, it was the original website from the 90s. Whatisthematrix.com. They brought it back, completely redesigned. And there's reports of like over 100,000 different variations of the teaser. For anybody that wasn't aware of what was going on, you go to the website, you click either the red pill or blue pill, and then it gives you kind of like this it gives you like a mix match of different clips. Like almost every time you played it, it would kind of rearrange the clips or show you different clips. So it incentivized you to keep checking back. But also they had a neat little, formula built into the video player that would read the exact time that you were watching it to kind of be like, oh, the Matrix is watching you. So you're watching it at 12:08 p.m. It'll say that, ooh. So yeah, I was super stoked. That was already getting me jazzed. Could not wait just for this trailer. And it did not disappoint, in my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because I'm already sold. But yeah, for you didn't seem as interested. I don't know where you stand with the entire trilogy. So what are your thoughts about this?
All right, so I don't really like Matrix 2 or 3. The first one, I don't love it either. I think the idea was great. I think the visuals for the time were insane. I don't think the acting's very strong. I don't think the dialogue's all that great. I think it's a cool movie. I think it's fun. But I don't love it the way a lot of people love it. Again, didn't like the other two. This trailer, I mean, I'm kind of mixed on it because to me, it kind of, in a lot of ways, and again, it's just a trailer, but in a lot of ways, the trailer's making it look like this movie is essentially a remake of the first one with some maybe twists and turns, which to me, I'm like, do I need that? But at the same time, I found the trailer intriguing and it made me want to check this flick out. So sure. That's where I'm at. I think, again, we get a lot of cool visuals. I enjoyed the use of the Jefferson Airplane tune. It just makes sense.
Yeah,
we do get a shot of like some Sentinels and the pink pods with the people in them. So there are definitely some throwbacks. I feel like this trailer was going for a lot of nostalgia. It didn't hit me in the nostalgia bone, which is a thing that I have. Just because I'm not a huge Matrix guy.
Yeah, it's located between like the elbow and like the whatever this is. That's where the nostalgia bone is, right? Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Cool. I just want to make sure.
But yeah, so I don't know, but I am curious to see it. I Keanu's back doing his thing, and they have Carrie-Anne Moss back, and I'm assuming Abdul-Mateen the third is playing like a younger Morpheus because he had sunglasses and kind of looks like a younger Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah. That seems to be the rumor mill going around that he's playing a version of Morpheus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, were there any particular things in the trailer that stood out to you, or anything you that really piqued your interest, or what?
Since you mentioned her, I just wanted to say that Carrie-Anne Moss looks like amazing. I
Mhm.
mean, holy crap. I mean, both Kerr and Keanu look terrific, but like that woman has not aged. I want to
Yeah.
know what her routine is. But yeah, I really liked this trailer. I'm a big fan of the series, The Matrix. Like it was, I think I was just kind of, because I'm a bit younger than you, so I it kind of just caught me in the right time when the
Right.
first one came out, where it really did just kind of capture my imagination. So I love the first one. Um, really love it. I'm just one of those diehards for it. Obviously, I think anybody can agree that there's kind of like a decrease in quality between like from 1 to 2 to 3. I still like The Matrix Reloaded. I think that there's a lot in it that I like about it. I think it has a absolutely killer car chase in the
The
middle
car
of
chase
it.
was cool. I'll
Yeah,
absolutely give you that.
yeah. And so there's great action. There's some really great ideas. And even the third one, which is the weakest out of the three, Revolutions, I it doesn't come across as like this big kind of corporate product of like, just put a third one out and make it the same as the other ones. Who cares? It really felt like the Wachowski sisters like were swinging for the fences. Like, and there's some really terrific, epic filmmaking on display. It just didn't quite coalesce. So yeah, it didn't end on a high note, and so the idea of a fourth one, I was like, maybe don't mess with it, or at the same time, maybe you can redeem it. But yeah, I think this trailer is really just gotten my hopes up. It's I don't know, it looks really good. It simultaneously looks like very similar to the first movie, but also aesthetically very different. Like one of the
Yeah.
things that you notice right away is how overly saturated, not
Oh yeah.
overly, but hyper saturated everything is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen any of the other the kind of recent Wachowski sisters works like Cloud Atlas onward. It has a very similar looking style where they're shooting on digital now, and everything the saturation is just cranked all the way up. That's the saturation noise.
Yeah.
um so which is different from the originals that had kind of, everything had a kind of a green tint in the Matrix, and even when they were in the real world it was kind of very desaturated. So it looks different. They didn't really focus a lot on like kind of kung fu, which I thought was strange because that's kind of what Matrix is known for. A lot more gunplay in this. um but yeah, I think that's where it's at with me right now, because I can absolutely see your point, and that's a fear of mine, of just like kind of how similar it looks to the first one in some regards, where it looks more kind of like a Force Awakens reboot quill, like a half reboot,
Right.
half sequel. I really hope it doesn't go down that same route. Like I really hope that maybe it's sort of like it kind of it kind of pulls the rug out from under us. Like it kind of starts off with like, this is a lot of repeating things, very cyclical, which is part of the mythology of the Matrix. Like by the time the first Matrix film started, they talked about how there's been multiple iterations of the Matrix. Like this is just Matrix 1.5, and now maybe we're on Matrix 2.0, if that makes sense. So it looks different. So I'm hoping that they use that familiarity to surprise us, like sort of like they kind of like, oh, you think it's going to go in this direction, but it goes in a different direction. But I will say that's a fear that I have, that I don't rely too heavily on just kind of repeating the same story beats
Right.
as the first one. Don't rely too heavily on just nostalgia, because if you're going to make a sequel, do something new with it, do something that we haven't seen, and expand on it.
Right.
So yeah, I am excited for it. Again, it looks very much like the Matrix, but also different. Like just visually, it just looks kind of like a different movie, much glossier,
Yeah.
very colorful. There's not really that green tint. It seems like the powers, like everybody's powers in the Matrix, have been turned up to 11. Like Neo before, he could fly and stuff by the end of the series, but now he's doing like energy blasts and blowing shit up. And there's a blue-haired girl that's flipping and shit. It looks cool though. I mean, I don't know. I'm all on board.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out for sure. Now, this time, for the first time in the Matrix franchise, it is not directed by the Wachowski sisters, but just Lana Wachowski. I don't know if that will impact the film in a good way or a bad way, or maybe not so much in either way. But that's interesting.
It's hard to see. It's the first time really that they've kind of started doing different projects, because
Right.
before they've just been that directing duo. So yeah, I'm that is also something that makes me wonder. It's like maybe the magic was really the two of them working together. But yeah, they have a really interesting, like, when it comes to the writers, at the very least, Lana Wachowski's writing it, but they also have an author and like a philosopher,
Hmm.
philosopher. I don't explain it, like someone who's not really written narratives but has written a bunch of philosophy books, which is, the Matrix is just steeped in their nerdy love for philosophy. So that's why I'm like, I think something interesting is going to come out of this, even if it's not quite up to the caliber of the first one, which is a high bar, and I don't really expect it to reach that. I'm hoping that it's something interesting and new. I don't know, because it's the Matrix is one of those. I know this is the fourth film, but it's one of those few things where it's a fourth film from an original concept, if that
Right.
makes sense. Like, it's not based on a book, it's not based on comic books or whatever. So I just really like that this purely kind of cinematic franchise, I hope, continues on.
All right, well, we'll see. The movie is slated to come out in theaters and on HBO Max day and date on, I believe it's December 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll check it out. You were mentioning how Keanu Reeves, along with Carrie Ann Moss, still looks way younger than he is. It's funny. It's all the beard, because
Mm-hmm.
like you watch like a John Wick movie or this trailer, and he does not look like a 57-year-old guy.
Mm-hmm.
You watch Bill and Ted 3, where he shaves the beard off, you can see it.
Yeah, he's got to keep that beard. And no offense, I mean, dude, by the time I'm 50, I hope to look half as good as Keanu Reeves. But
Mhm.
yeah, I I thought that too. Like, especially with the long hair in Bill and Ted's, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, he's kind of aging now. But we throw the beard on, it's like, oh, he's ageless.
Mhm.
He this man does not age.
I'll also say, and this is me being a bit of a jerk, I'll admit, which I'm not normally because I'm Canadian. But when Matrix 3 came out, I was working in a movie theater, and it was opening night, and all these people were like lined up, and they were all wearing like leather, and they were like, you could
Mhm.
tell they were like so into it. And they went into the movie, and then everyone came out of the movie, and they were like doing the Charlie Brown walk. Everyone
Oh
was just like
no,
bummed out, and
that's funny.
it was kind of funny. I
Yeah.
felt like a dick for kind of laughing inwardly, but here we
Mm.
are.
No, I probably would have done the same. Even though I was disappointed as well, I probably would have like, this is kind of funny. Like, we're all just
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to our main topic, which of course is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Again, this will be a full spoilers review. We're not going to hit every beat of the movie, but we're going to talk about some significant things. So before we actually get into it, Chris, let me ask you, can you sort of give me was this a movie that you were really psyched for? Was it something that, I remember you liked the trailers, um, but was this something like, was it something like an Endgame where you were like, I have to see this, or was it kind of more like, I'll get around to it, or where were you at going in?
and now it certainly wasn't like an end game status. No Marvel property has kind of got me that excited as I was for Endgame. That just kind of felt like this conclusion. But I was interested. I was interested in seeing it. I wanted it to succeed. I liked the main actor Simu Liu, and it just seemed like it. I liked Marvel. I like when Marvel does kind of new things and introducing a new hero and having it steeped in kind of Chinese lore and mythology. I was like, yeah, I want this to succeed. Um, and I want it to be good, but I wasn't like chomping at the bit to see it. I almost didn't even go see it in the theaters. Like, I was really kind of waiting to see what critical response was, because if people just said it was like meh or even kind of on the caliber of Black Widow, I might have just said, like, because there's COVID is still going on and there's a Delta variant, I might have even just been like, I might just wait. But it got such a really good word of mouth that I was like, okay, I want to see it. I want to see it. And I saw it opening weekend, and I'm really glad I did, because I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I thought it was just a ton of fun. Not only that, it was such a great movie to go back to the theaters for. I think I was telling you, not on the podcast, but I think on chat, how the last movie that I saw in theaters was The Green Knight. And I liked that movie, but the theater experience was just bad. Like, the people next to me weren't wearing masks. They were just talking and just coughing. And it was just a shit audience. And so I was like, I don't really feel like going back to the movies. But the audience that I had for Shang-Chi was just so into it. And everybody was polite and wearing a mask and cheering and laughing along. And I was like, man, this was a great movie to go back to the theaters for.
Right.
So yeah, but in short, I really enjoyed this movie.
Well, and so for me, like, I I thought the trailers looked fine. I didn't know anything about this character. I had never heard of this character until they announced the movie.
Mhm.
I thought it was cool that they were doing something a little different and that it was kind of more of a martial arts film.
Mhm.
But the trailers hadn't really sucked me in, and I was
Mhm.
like, what? It's a Marvel movie. It's probably going to be fun, but I'm not
Yeah.
dying to see it. I went and
Yeah.
checked it out, and I had a great time with this movie. I thought it
Mhm.
was a huge amount of fun.
Mhm.
Um, most of the fights I thought were awesome. For me, and this is kind of where I found myself really surprised was I'm not going to say this is a top tier Marvel movie, but for me, it's like upper echelon.
Yeah.
I feel like I
Uh,
need to see it again before I can sort of say that officially, but
yeah.
whatever, I've said it. So here we are.
At the very least, I think we could both agree that when it comes to the solo movies, like the solo Marvel movies or the introductory Marvel movies, this is top tier
Yeah.
in that regard. Like when it compared to Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, I think this they've just kind of perfected that formula at that point. That
Mhm.
this just felt like everything worked so smoothly.
All right. So before we go into the story, let's talk a little bit about the cast. And of course, we have to start with Simu Liu, who
Mhm.
you said you liked. I didn't really know him prior to this. I know he's on that. He was not from Toronto. He was born in China, but he grew up in
Mhm.
Toronto or in
Mhm.
a suburb of Toronto called Scarborough, which is doesn't mean a goddamn thing, but I still appreciate it.
Yeah.
He's on this Canadian show called Kim's Convenience, which I have not watched. Recently got canceled, but like everybody seems to love this show.
Mhm.
Um, so that's cool. I really liked him in the movie. I thought, um, you know, as I said in the non-spoiler review, I'm sure he had like stunt doubles in this film, but you can tell very clearly a lot of the fighting and some of the stunts are clearly him. And I looked it up,
Yeah.
and he does have a background in martial arts. He's done
Mhm.
work as a stuntman in the past. He's done a lot of gymnastics, so he's very physical. His physicality in the movie is great. There are
Yeah.
a number of moments where he does like a jump, like scissor kick. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
thing, but whatever.
Mhm.
And it's very clearly him.
Mhm.
Um, I thought he did a great job with that. He does a really good job with the humor. He and Aquafina have wonderful chemistry.
Mhm.
I love that they didn't really push a romance. It's kind of hinted at towards the
Yeah.
end of the movie, but for most
Mhm.
of it, they're buddies, they're
Yeah.
chums, they're pals. I liked that. That was a little bit different. What were your overall thoughts on Simu Luke?
Yeah, I thought he was really good. I hadn't seen all of the seasons of Kim's Convenience, just because I literally as soon as I started to watch it, that's when it not just got canceled, but like kind of stuff was coming out about the creators and how they weren't really like having Asian writers on the show that's about Asian heritage. So it just kind of felt a bit icky. But everything that I've seen of it, I really enjoyed, and Simu Liu is great in it. And I remember I think talking to you about in the trailers kind of made Shang-Chi, the character, feel kind of like stoic action man. And I was like, I really hope that they don't, because Simu Liu is so charismatic. And in the movie, they really let that charisma shine.
Absolutely.
He's so likable. Like he's just so charming. Really does seem like the kind of guy you just want to grab a beer with.
Mhm.
And he's nailed the humor without being goofy. He handled the drama of it quite well.
Mhm.
And yeah, and as far as like just like a action superstar, you're right. It's very clear that he seems like the kind of guy that would try to get away with doing as much of his own stunts as possible.
Yeah.
And he's clearly has a background in martial arts, and you can tell when it's really him. And yeah, so that really just helped that it's like he's got the physicality of this down. And yeah, so I think that he's a great lead. And honestly, I really hope that this kind of like gets him into much more things. Like I want to see this guy like in a ton of movies now, because I think he's
Right.
terrific.
Well, and at the very least, and we'll get to the mid and post credits, but it is certainly hinted at that he's going to be probably in quite a bit going forward. I mean,
Sure, yeah. I meant like, even besides Marvel
no,
stuff. I just
I know.
yeah,
Just at the very least, we have that.
yeah, for sure.
But
He's gonna be Shang-Chi for a bit.
yeah, but no, I do think with seemingly most people really liking this movie, thinking he was
Mhm.
really good. I do think this is going to sort of blow his career wide open. And
I hope so. Yeah,
that's awesome.
well deserved.
Um,
Yeah.
another character I want to talk about is the sort of central villain of the movie, Wen Wu, played by Tony Leung.
Mhm.
And it's, I think a lot of people would agree that one issue that the MCU has had in a lot of their movies is some of their villains are not that interesting. Of course, you have Thanos was great, and a couple others, but in a lot of cases, they're a little bit one note and a little one dimensional. And I really liked Wen Wu. I thought he was a very layered character. It's always, you can have a character, just as an example, Zack Snyder's Justice League. In the Justice League, Steppenwolf was just evil and wanted to take over the world. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, he had been banished by Darkseid from his home, and he was just trying to get back in the good graces. Like, there was a pathos there. You could understand why he was doing what he was doing. Granted, Darkseid just wanted to rule the world, but
yeah,
it goes a long way when I can understand why a villain is doing what they're doing, and particularly if I can sympathize and empathize with that character. And I absolutely did with Wen Wu, because he is very clearly, as much as a kind of an asshole of a father he was in many ways, he clearly loves his two children, Shang-Chi, and what was the sister's name? Do you remember?
I have to look it up. Sorry.
Xiaolin or something like that.
Yeah, let me see.
Something like that. I don't know.
Sorry, because I went down the rabbit hole of IMDb on Tony Leung's filmography. Let me see. So yeah, it's the spelling is Xialing. So Xialing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he clearly loved his two children. He clearly loved his wife, who is, by the time we get to present day in the film, she's long dead.
Yeah.
And I thought Tony Leung was great. I thought he did a wonderful job with the physicality, but also just with the acting. And what were your thoughts there?
Oh, I mean, Tony Leung has been one of my favorite actors for a long time. This is his first kind of Hollywood film, but I've seen him in a ton of Hong Kong films and a lot of mainland China films, everything from, Chungking Express to In the Mood for Love, to Hero, that movie with Jet Li, which I think a lot of people have seen. He was in Infernal Affairs, which was remade as Departed. So I've seen him in a ton of stuff. I love this guy's work. And I thought that they used him so well in this. I was worried, because Marvel has a track record with the villains, that I was like, don't waste such an incredible actor. And they didn't. They gave this character of Wen Wu a lot of depth. Like you said, it started off as like he just wants power, which is like a motivation, but that's not his only motivation. Like, it really becomes this emotional, familial story with him kind of at the center of losing his wife, kind of losing this kind of his son to an extent, not through death, but just kind of like this separation and everything. And his main motivation throughout the movie is mostly just this blind love that he has for his wife. Like, he's just kind of, he's so desperate and in despair of losing the purpose in his life, his wife, that he's bringing about all this terribleness and chaos around him. But it's something, like you said, that you can empathize with. And the dude crushed it. I mean, there's some genuinely emotional moments in this, and he gets all kind of misty-eyed and everything. And I'm like, that's it. You get a great actor. Give him something to work with, so it's not just punchy all the time. Even though we'll get to the punchies of this, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the best of the punchy of all the Marvel movies. But yeah, he's great, and what a great villain. I really hope we see more of him. They kind of sucked the soul out of him, so I don't know. But I mean, never say never when it comes to these Marvel movies. Yeah. It'd be awesome to see him again. Same with Killmonger, where I'm like, Black Panther, it's like, this is such a great character. Don't kill him. Come on, like, keep him around for a bit.
Right.
So yeah, I thought he was great.
Well, and it should be, since we're spoiling things, we should say that, like, it's not that his wife dies and now he's just angry at the world and he's trying. Yeah. No, he's hearing her voice from inside this magical. I kind of likened it to like sort of a Chinese Wakanda, and that it's, I think it was called Talo, which is this little sort of hidden magical village. but from a place inside, like a cave inside that town or on the
Mhm.
outskirts of that town, he's hearing his voice, his wife's voice in his head saying, "Come save me, I'm in this thing." And eventually we find out that he's being deceived by this giant evil entity, but we'll get to that. Yeah, I thought Tony Leung was great. Um, and I don't think we need to sort of harp on it too much because Michelle Yeoh and awesome are just three words that just go together.
Yeah, she's not given much to do. She kind of appears in the third act, but anything that Michelle Yeoh's in, I think she's great. She was one of the best parts of Gunpowder Milkshake, which movie I didn't really like, but yeah, so she's great. Not to go through like everyone, but Michelle Yeoh's great. Aquafina, I liked. She's a bit of the Marvel sidekick, the comedy relief through most of it, but they also gave her some genuine moments of growth and some drama where she wasn't cracking jokes, which I appreciated. Because like the Darcy character in the Thor movies, she's very one note of just like, I'm making a funny quip. And I was afraid that Aquafina's character of Katie was going to be like that, but no, she had some genuine moments throughout.
Yeah. And I really did buy that friendship for sure.
Yeah, no, they legitimately seem like old buddies, and every time they cut to them drinking and singing karaoke, I just wanted to be there with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out, since we do want to talk about the fighting, when the scene where Tony Leung first meets his wife, he gets to the outskirts of Talo and they have a fight, and it's very, it had moments of like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but it was a fight, but it was also like a dance. It was also like a courtship. It was very balletic.
Yeah.
I thought that scene was absolutely gorgeous, particularly with just the way the forest looked and the colors. How did that stand out to you?
Oh, I thought it was terrific. It was like surprisingly poignant for a Marvel movie, because
particularly when we've just met these characters,
Right? Yeah, and it's you take it from the wushu style of kind of the high fantasy martial arts like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where people are kind of flying around. It's very spiritual. So yeah, to start off with that, and like you said, it wasn't really a fight for action. It was more just like this dance, this dance between these two people falling in love, set in this gorgeous scenery, and it felt, besides some CGI elements to it, I think that it really did feel like a genuine Chinese martial arts film. Like it had that kind of beauty to it. And I was like, again, since it was also kind of like setting up this love story, this romance, I was like, well, this is so not Marvel, and I'm loving it. It felt like a real movie, Court.
It's true.
Yeah.
I guess we should probably talk about the bus fight. Because the bus fight, aside from, again, we harp on this all the time, there was quite a bit of quick editing, quite a bit of shaky cam. I've seen much worse, but there was quite a bit of that. However, the choreography was awesome. The action, just everything that was going down, because it's a fight scene, but it's also essentially a car chase because this bus is going off the rails. Aquafina is driving. She also had no idea that Sean, as she knows him, could fight like this, and he's taking on all of these dudes, including one guy whose arm turns into a sword. And he's taking these dudes out. He's taking his lumps as well. How did that scene play out for you?
It's easily the best fight in the scene. It's the best action scene, which is it's kind of a bummer because it's like the first big one, because it's like in the first act. So I'll touch on the other ones later. But what a standout sequence, what a standout kind of opening sequence to kind of show off Shang-Chi as a character and what his abilities are. And I didn't notice any kind of overly quick cuts. I mean, like, it was rapidly cut, but at the same time, it felt much more purposeful, because in between the shots lingered for much longer. There was a lot of sequences where they didn't cut and they just kind of let the choreography go. And that's what, you and I have been harping on that forever. I mean, I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the biggest culprit of it, but even Black Widow did that to an extent of just like I said, just kind of shaky cam. Like they were kind of, in other Marvel movies, they were kind of unsure of the action. So just add motion to it, make it look fast. This, they clearly planned the choreography well. They wanted to show off the choreography. They wanted to make it, great martial arts does look like just a lethal dance. And they wanted to show how deadly Simu Liu is as this character. And I think they got that across really well. It gets a bit, they crank up the energy of it because it's a bus that the brakes are broken and there's a guy with a lightsaber arm or whatever. But yeah, it was just cool. Like there was just a point where like if it's this tracking shot of Simu Liu within the bus fighting bunch of people, then he climbs out the window and then he gets on top of the bus and it's rounding a corner. And I'm like, this is well done action. This is really well done action.
And I appreciated that, like they broke it up a little bit with some humor with the guy who was like live streaming the whole thing. I thought they did that like just the right amount that it continued being funny throughout the scene, but it didn't take the focus away from what was happening.
No.
That guy was making me laugh. I was enjoying that.
Yeah.
Particularly because he started with "It's your boy so and so." And I was like, that's good attention to detail. Another fight scene that really stood out to me, and it sort of takes place over a few different locations, but the part that took place on the scaffolding of the building in Macau. And for a guy who I get when I'm like really high up, I get a bit of vertigo and whatever. So that was a little bit harrowing for me. But it was crazy. Some of the choreography that he was fighting the 10 rings, which are the sort of society that are under Tony Leung's or Wen Wu's command. And just the way they were like flipping through the scaffolding, and of course Aquafina Katie almost plummets to her death, and then Zhai Ling shows up, and that was a crazy sequence. Do you have anything about that one you want to say?
No, I just completely agree. I think that was great as well. Even though I was saying that I think the bus was the best solo action set piece, this was a close follow-up. Really interesting because it started inside, then went, like you said, to the scaffolding, then back inside. And again, I just loved how the camera was just like certain shots were just following him for several seconds without cutting, of him just kind of flipping around through the scaffolding and fighting multiple people at once. It felt very Jackie Chan to me, which I love. Jackie Chan is the fucking god. I love him. So yeah, I thought it was great. And then it comes back inside when he's fighting the guy with the cool mask, which I'll touch on him in a second, but because I was a little nitpick of mine, that non-character. But yeah, so for at this point, we're kind of into the second act, like early into the second act. And I was like, yes, this is awesome. If the action remains at this caliber like this, then I'll absolutely love this film. But I don't think it did. I think that by the time the third act came about, it kind of shifted the type of action sequences they were doing, and not for the better, in my opinion.
I found the second act is where, sort of after that sequence, when they get imprisoned, and they meet Ben Kingsley and Morris, the little whatever it was, little CGI creature. That's when the movie, I don't want to say it started to lose me, but it really slowed down for me. They went quite a while without a fight scene. I did like the action sequence when they were trying to get to Talo and they were having to drive through the forest where that was cool. That was very inventive. And then they get to Talo and they meet Michelle Yeoh, their aunt. And it's a lot of training sequences. And then we get to the sort of climax, and Wen Wu and Shang-Chi have a fight, which was good. I liked that. Father-son going at it. That was cool. And then it just kind of got generic Marvel for me. Now, different in that it leaned into fantasy a lot harder than most of the movies do. But, Shang-Chi's riding a giant CGI creature, in this case, a dragon, which I don't know if it's confirmed. I've heard people saying that's Fin Fang Foom. I don't know anything about that character.
They didn't say the name because I was looking for it, because I know the name Fin Fang Foom, but I was waiting for them to say it and no one did. So whatever. I guess it doesn't matter regardless. Maybe his name's Greg.
Right.
Come on, Greg.
And then Greg is fighting Phil, who's this other giant.
It's a real dick of a bat dragon.
Yeah.
Phil.
yeah, Phil's sucking souls and blah blah blah. And for me, like that, it looked cool. Dragons are cool. I'm into dragons, but
Yeah.
it just kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it dropped the mythology because dragons, but it just, I don't know. There was an elegance to the mythology earlier in the film that there, for me, just kind of got a bend to just pow pow pow.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, but I think I know what you mean, where it didn't necessarily drop the mythology. It was just more like, here's all of the mythology at once. It's like, holy shit. Because it was really getting to this point of so many different creatures, and then this is happening, and this is happening, that it's like, I think back to, one of yours and mine favorite films ever, which is Lord of the Rings, which had, crazy amount of mythology to have to convey, but it kind of doled it out. Like, it had an introductory of like, here's what the story is, but it didn't just like cram everything all at once. It kind of let things kind of build over. Most of the film, they weren't in Tao Lo, or this kind of, not weird, but this fantasy setting. And then the last like 20 minutes, it's like, holy shit, there's bat demons that are sucking souls and dragons and this. I'm like, oh my God. So it's kind of like a mixed bag for me, because there were some interesting visuals of it. Like I like kaijus and stuff. So there was something interesting about like this kind of like this Eastern Asian type of dragon with like no wings, just kind of like serpentine around fighting this bat demon. And then Shang-Chi and his sister were just like floating around on his back. I'm like, all right, there's some cool kind of imagery here. But and although Marvel has never gone this full fantasy necessarily, it still felt very Marvel-like, where it felt bloated, and it felt just like the CGI, just push the CGI on the screen and people will clap. And I didn't dig that. Again, it's especially because what the movie kind of built up throughout the rest of it, the earlier acts, was this more kind of intimate fighting, or more about kung fu. It was really more about the kung fu and this great choreography. And by the end of it, it was just like, screw it, there's dragons and CGI. And that was a bummer. And also, one last thing before I pass it back to you is that if you look at a lot of the movies that this is inspired from, which is a lot of, Hong Kong action films, Hong Kong martial arts films, Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Bruce Lee, even, Tony Leung is in Hero, which I think this pulled a lot of, inspiration from as well, in addition to Crouching Tiger. A lot of those movies, they realize that like they have like these giant action scenes, but then usually the last battle is a one-on-one. They really have like the story structure of like, it's this one-on-one confrontation, and the drama of it is what really carries it. A lot of it, like in Crouching Tiger and Hero, they're not even really action scenes. It's like, maybe there's some fight, there's some punches being thrown, but it's all about the drama, and it's all about the characters. And they kind of dropped the ball. And I think that Marvel could have had its cake and eaten it too, by maybe having the battle, but then the final confrontation is just focusing on Shang-Chi and Wen Wu, his father, because that was the meat of it. Yeah. And even
that
though
that was a great scene.
It was, and I got chills. I want to touch on the score. I want to say the score I thought was great. Like this central theme of Shang-Chi was terrific with the kind of chorded instrument. I don't know if it's a harp, but I was really feeling the emotion of it. It was still a bit CGI of them throwing the glowing rings at each other, but I was like, just focus on this. Maybe you don't even need the rings. Just focus on this, because I care about their relationship and their fighting.
Yeah.
So that kind of, it didn't leave me with a high, which is kind of a bummer. Like, I really wish it kind of continued to rose, and I was just like, holy shit, I'm on this high riding out of the theater. It really was just kind of like, okay, all right, let's get rid of this dragon thing so we can kind of be done with this by now.
Right. So then basically, essentially after that's your big climax. Mm-hmm. Shang-Chi and Katie go back to San Francisco. They sit down with their friends, which they set up early in the movie, and they're telling the whole story, and it's played for laughs. And then Wong, Benedict Wong's character from Doctor Strange and Endgame and Infinity War and all that, he shows up in the sparkly thing that he does. And then, is that the mid credits?
No, that's the ending. I mean, the mid credits picks up after with Wong, but yeah, the ending really is just, it's kind of a weird ending. it felt like the ending was almost like a post-credit scene, because they had like this beautiful moment of them looking out over like the lake with all the lanterns for all the fallen dead. And then they do a trope that I don't know why writers think they need to do, where they have the characters just retell the events that we've just saw. You know what I mean? We're just like, oh, and then we were on a dragon, then we were doing this. And I'm like, yeah,
Right.
no, I got it. Like I was there. You don't have to tell
Right.
me that. And then, like I said, that whole ending just felt like, what, you know, Wong appears like, come on, you're Avengers now, pretty much. And then the end. And it's like,
Right.
okay, that just felt like that all that was just set up that they're going to be in further movies. But I don't know.
Well, and so before we get to the mid and post credit scenes, I do want to mention I did think there was some visual effect shots in here, particularly early in the film, that didn't look great. However, it reminded me of Raya and the Last Dragon, which is funny because that had dragons and Aquafina.
Mm.
But everything they did with water in this movie looked absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And the first set of credits that we get before the mid-credit scene is playing out moments from the film, fight scenes and what have you, but entirely in animated water.
Mhm.
And I found it like absolutely mesmerizing. What did you feel about that?
Yeah, it was really beautiful. It was almost like a James Bond opening, even though it was kind of like the closing credits.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting design and very artfully done. I also agree with you that I think that the CGI wasn't really great in a lot of parts. There were certain moments like they had close-ups of the dragons and it looked very detailed. I think the biggest distraction for me was the green screen. Like every time they were in Tao Lo, I was like, no, you're not. Like you're just on a set right now. Like I never bought that world because everyone had like a little sheen around their head because it was green screen. Like me right now, if you're watching it, it didn't look believable. That's fine.
What are you gonna do? So the mid-credit scene is basically they're with Wong and they're talking to, and this is something that I mentioned in my non-spoiler review. There's something that I found very confusing about the sequence, which I didn't even think about when I watched it, but I was talking to my buddy on the phone about the movie, and then it occurred to me. So they're with Wong, possibly in the Sanctum Sanctorum. I'm not sure. And they're talking to, in hologram, we get a couple of cameos of Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner, not Professor Hulk.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I think it's just one of those things where they were like, hey, we want to use we want to still work with Mark Ruffalo. So we're just going to show that he's not the Hulk right now. We'll figure it out later. Like, I honestly wouldn't, I mean, they're working on that She-Hulk series. And I know he's going to be in it. I really think this is going to be one of those things where it's like just explained in an offhand comment of like, oh yeah, I was getting tired of not fitting into my shirt. So I went back to Bruce Banner. Like, I guarantee it's going to be something like that where they're just, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. It's just sort of like, what happened? I'm sure there's a story there, but I doubt they're going to delve into it.
Which, I mean, yeah, I could see them like kind of almost doing that to play it as a bit of a joke, but he literally says in Endgame, like, he's like, now I'm the best of both worlds. I'm this giant Hulk, but I'm like super intelligent and not a rage monster. Yeah. So unless it was some kind of accidental thing that turned him back to Bruce, I feel like I'm going to have trouble buying that he like chose to go back to that when he was saying he was the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Like I said, I agree with you. I think that like there could be an explanation, that there should be one, but it didn't. But I have a feeling they're just going to be like the same way that they kind of set up a romance between him and Black Widow. And then they were just kind of like, forget about that. Nobody liked that, whatever. Right. So
I liked that. I thought it was cute. It was fine. All right. So we should wrap it up because we got to get you back to work, but we will just briefly talk about the post-credit sequence. Basically, we see that we're told throughout the film that Xialing, Shang-Chi's sister, was never allowed to train because she was female. She did train kind of on her own, and she became an adept fighter, but we basically see back in, I can't remember where their sort of palace was, but we see that now she's essentially in charge, and she's got legions of women all training to become these super badass assassins and martial artists. That's pretty much all that was there, as I recall.
Yeah.
Do you feel like they're setting up something for the future? Do you think that was
Yeah.
just sort of paying off that character?
I think that they're setting up that she's probably going to be kind of an antagonistic force going forward. In the same way that it just, I mean, they mirrored the shot from the beginning where you see Wen Wu kind of first sit down in the throne and you have like the symbol of the 10 rings behind his head.
Right.
She did the same thing. She sat on the throne. She's with Razor Fist, that douche, which was like her father's henchman. And so it really just seems like she's taking over the mantle, which kind of confuses me because I mean, I get that the character was introduced as like she's running like an underground fight club pretty much, but she also seemed to, be against her father or fought against him and understood that his ways were wrong. So I don't really buy her just being like, well, I'm taking over this evil organization now. I don't get that. That seems like a leap to me. Like she was clearly presented as like a good character, maybe just doing some shady stuff to make some money. But I didn't get the impression that she was going to take over the entire friggin' organization.
Unless she turns him into a force for good or something like that. If she goes,
that'd be cool.
It'd be cool. But if she goes full evil, they didn't earn that in this movie anyway. For me,
I didn't get the impression that to me, maybe this is just how I was reading it. It really came across like she's up to no good. Like she's
that was the impression that I got too. Yeah. We should just mention quickly because we sort of glossed over it in the mid-credit sequence when Shang-Chi, Katie, and Wong are talking to Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner. They mention that basically the rings, which we've barely talked about in this review, but whatever.
The
rings sent a signal out somewhere. We don't really know where. But obviously that's setting something up. And then Wong basically says to Shang-Chi, your life is going on a brand new trajectory right now. Essentially, my read on it was join the Avengers.
Yeah.
And then they go bust some more karaoke, which was quite funny. That was great.
That was fun. Yeah.
But yeah, so like we did talk some negatives because that's what a movie review is. You talk about the good, you talk about what didn't work for you. But both of us really enjoyed this movie very much. It's obviously a recommendation from both of us. We are going to wrap this up. So as we do, Chris, why don't you tell people where they can follow you online?
My Instagram handle is called Art of Light and Shadow. It's just kind of a fun cinema blog where I post about the movies that I'm watching. I do rankings and community voting and stuff. It's a lot of fun, so check it out. Art of Light and Shadow.
If you want to check out Andris, who is not here today, go on YouTube, do a search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror. He does movie reviews of sort of horror, B-movie, sci-fi kind of stuff from the dawn of cinema to the modern era. Check him out. You're already on my channel, so you know where that is. Would love it if you click the subscribe button. But of course, you can also check me out on Twitter and Instagram, where I don't post very often, at Courtshake. As per usual, we want to encourage you guys to drop a like on this video if you did enjoy it, so we can help grow this little podcast of ours. And of course, jump into the comments and let us know what you thought of Shang-Chi, if you're looking forward to Matrix Resurrections. And of course, we'll remind you that you can get audio-only versions of this podcast places like Spotify and Google Podcasts. That is the show today. We want to thank you guys very much for watching. And of course, we hope you stay safe and healthy. I will not be back this weekend. I'm starting my Toronto International Film Festival coverage, so I don't think I'm going to have time. Hopefully, it's looking like Chris and Andris are going to do a show on their own. You guys are maybe going to talk about the latest, the zombie episode of What If.
My favorite show ever.
Right. And we'll see what else you guys talk about, but that'll be up on my channel, should be up on Monday. So everybody, hope you'll check back for that. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time. Thanks very much for watching and have a good one.
Take care, everyone. Bye.